think like Sprout is like $100 a month. Hootsuite's like 30. So like it's not too bad. And then like I mean what? Like for $30 there's only one user, aka you, allowed, or like one user that you and someone else, like if it's like a hacks thing or whatever, share.
All right, well, I'm going to try to live stream now. So,
Again?
well, now,
Okay.
I mean, now I'm actually going to do it. I'm going to try
Yeah.
to actually put it out there and send links and see if anybody shows up.
Oh, like now?
Yeah, like now. I was going to do a
Oh,
video anyway, so I'm
okay.
going to see if I can get a decent workflow set up with this. So, you you learn via the video stream, and then you can ask questions in the chat. How about that?
Oh, okay. Well, should I get off of Zoom then?
Yeah, that's what I was just saying.
Okay, that sounds good. So,
All right, so well, if you caught at the beginning there, caught Tom. We're trying to figure this whole thing out. Never done this before, actually. That's a lie. I've done this before. It's just been a long time since I did this. So we're going to try to send this out and see if anybody shows up. Live coding session. Whoops, get rid of the port. To wire up something. Not a web component, but now it will be in the web. All right, so let's put that out there. I don't actually know if anybody will jump on. We'll see. Like I said, I've never done this before, at least not in a long time. All right, so we've got that out there. I got OBS running. Okay. So, hello, Tom Vision. Hello. How are you? I hope you enjoy this live stream. I am a live streamer. Today we are going to learn about components and web. All right. So I got this issue in the issue queue. It's from Buttercups. They use Elms over in the UK. And we are going to try to take this, whatever this thing is requesting, and turn some of their originally designed assets into web components. So I'm going to try and get the link out there a little bit. I'm going to actually post messing with live streaming, post that on Slack. All right. So we're going to do a live stream associated with web components. So if you're not familiar with our project, HAXTheWeb.org is where you find out more info about it. And I'm very happy to announce that our tooling is reaching a level of maturity that other people are able to just pick it up and run with it now. So what I'm going to be showing today and messing with, feel free to jump in on the chat. Never done this before, so we'll see how well this actually works, is taking a component. All right, so here's our example. This is a Elms Learning Network-based deployment. It's behind several versions from where Elms Learning Network is currently, and Elms Learning Network, if you're not familiar, is a Drupal-based system. So it's decades behind reality. Just kidding. So what this group has done is they've made these like custom widgets. And the point of this is so it's for educational material, in this case training material, and this is actually one of their example sites to train their trainers in how to build interactive looking content so that we're on the same page there. Okay, so because they're coming along this tax-laden journey with us, and we've gone full-on web components in the newer versions of Elms Learning Network, I offered to take some of their assets and say, let's make these into components, right? So that's what today's stream is. So looking at what we have here currently, we can see they have like this little cog thing. They use their theme engine, whatever you want to call it, is called Honeycomb. They have another one, I'm told. But what I'm going to try to do is take this bar, and we're going to make the bar. We're going to make it a web component. I'm going to go through the ways at which I would then increase the API flexibility of this, so that you can write in the title or progressive enhancement. Also, so that you have the icon. And then after we get the add icon wrapped in there, then we're going to wire it up to hacks in the end. So we can see the whole life cycle. Like, this is my process. I take a design comp in this case. We do some tweaks to it. We pull the CSS out of the global scope, put it into this little tiny element. Then we wire it up to Hax. Let's see it in the tooling, the whole shebang. So I got VS Code up here. I was messing with replace tag again. If you didn't see my video about replace tag, I got to write a blog post up about it still. But I think the best place for this to live is probably under our course elements. So we've got a course design kind of sub-repo here now. And it, well, I shouldn't say kind of sub-repo, it is a sub-repo. So looking at one of those is really quickly, just in case you haven't seen any of our other work. This is something from Eberly College of Science. So at Penn State, this is called a block quote. So our web component is a block-quote tag. You can see at the bottom it has a call to custom elements.define block quote.tag. Now, a lot of times we end up putting a static get tag on our elements. That way it can be overridden and rewritten very easily without it being like hard-coded into a file with that global call. So there's no requirement for that convention. It's just something we landed on that we enjoy doing. So what ended up happening is they had one of these little things. It's a block quote. Let me fire up the tooling so you can actually see what this looks like. That might help. So fire up yarn start. All right, our tooling generates these little demo space, and then I have to actually, because I didn't plug it in, but go to the demo. So what you get with a block quote element is like this. So you end up getting these little fake quotes on the edges. The other nice thing, it's an icon, so you don't have like a screen reader reading like air quotes type of a thing. And then we can see the citation says Albert Einstein. Now I can take this and step into the DOM. One of my favorite things to do with web components is just update the data. And because we use lit element, we get this nice, it just updates it, right? So this is a property bind. We've got citation is for the word right there, and then it has a slot, and the slot boots up whatever's inside of it. I actually think I updated it as well so that you don't even need a slot name. Yeah. So it'll accept the slot name quote, or it'll just work with whatever's inside of it, and it's going to position it there, make sure it has these nice little quotes. So it's a good use of our shadow root, and our shadow root in this case has simple icon light, editor format quote. Okay, so this is the general, right, I'm just trying to frame this for you. We take this design comp, we move it from somewhere else, we turn it into a web component, and then we wire it up to Hax. So the wire up to Hax part, if you've ever heard me say that, you don't know what it means. Wire up to Hax means we supply a static get Hax properties callback. And this callback on, or method, whatever you want to call it, on the block quote class is supplying something called Hax Schema. And Hax Schema is just a little JSON blob that if the Hax editor is part of the DOM, it will siphon this off and turn it into the data required for Hax to know how to edit it. So in this case, it says gizmo, block quote, and then that's how it knows to put something called block quote in the interface, use this icon, and then generate fields accordingly. So use in the configuration tab, put the property citation has a label of citation, and its input method is a text field. And through this little schema, that's how things talk to Hax. It's how we can empower people to write web components into the DOM without knowing that's what they're doing. So let's work on porting that other one over here. I don't know why I just stopped that and started it again. So what we're going to do, we'll go find that component, or what will become a component. Now, a lot of times what I'll do, I will find something that encompasses the whole element. Okay, so we're going to do this little activity box is what they call this one. Now, first I want to look and see, is there another thing called, yes, there's another thing called activity box. So this is perfect. I'm going to actually name this activity box because that's what it is. They've already called it activity box. They've scoped it that way. Thank you, Rick, for having the hyphen in here. That's awesome. So what I do first is let's get the HTML out of that. So I copy what the current HTML structure is. And then I'm going to go over to course design, make sure we're, I just used that to boot this up. So for the purposes of what we're doing here, these elements to me are not ultra reusable outside of a learning context. You could still use them somewhere else, but I'm trying to lump a lot of these little like educational widgets into something called course design. So under lib, we're going to make a file. That file, in this case, is going to be called activity box. I already forgot. So we're going to make under lib, new file, activity-box.js. Nothing says you have to do these all as individual files. I just prefer doing them that way personally. Then I usually steal the top of a file I've already made because I'm lazy. And then we do custom elements.define, and then we'll do activity box.tag and activity box. So what I'm doing is I'm establishing a empty container of an element here that we can start to build out. So then I'm going to do static get tag return, and that's going to be called activity box. It's extending lit element, so we're going to get the nice data binding characteristics of it. Lit element requires a render lifecycle callback, so we'll do render HTML in this case. I see your question there, Tom. Just give me 1 second. All right, so let's see what Tom said. Would you be able to use this for a bigger brand property, like some brand banner with an icon? Yeah, and that's a good question. That ends up being a common, I don't know about issue, so much as just inflection point, right? Like as far as rationale behind how and why you decide to name this thing the way you do and the way you build out the scope. So we could, as part of this, right, we could have multiple activity boxes that are called something else, or maybe we have activity box is kind of a lower order element, and then we put it into something that's called like brand banner, or the reverse. And maybe there's brand banner, and that's the full thing. And then we have our own little icon library, and then there's an icon. That really is kind of involves the theory by which you're naming these things. Now, I've personally found it a lot harder when not making stuff from scratch to have that conversation, because this already is part of some other design library and way in which information is visually constructed. So I think what we're going to have to do for this one is just leave it as it is. But that's a good question. That is a consideration that comes up quite frequently, is like, what is the name of this? Does it inherit from something else? Is it a button? Does the button have an icon? Is the icon a standalone thing? Okay, and then we put the button and the icon together. So yeah, you could totally have like a top level brand banner thing there. So one nice thing, you can at least get a little bit out of divitis. I saw some people trolling Web Components land about this yesterday, that you don't really get out of divitis. You do, you just call it something else. You call it like custom element itis. So I'm going to drop this class name because I don't need that structure anymore. The structure is going to be created by the activity box, right? So that's going to form my wrapper. Now inside this element, we're going to have, it says cog single. Now we're going to look at what cog single does. We're going to look at activity box too. So I start porting the CSS. Again, this is like my own internal process, how I do this. So I'm going to take all this, copy, and then we're going to do a static get styles, which is specific to the way lit element works. All right, and you don't have to do these as array responses. I just always do. So then I'm going to start trying to apply these things to host. For those of you jumping on the stream late, I am taking an element that already exists, and by element I mean it's just a blob of divs and things, and I'm going to try to actually convert it into a usable web component as a standalone, so that you don't need the entire design library just to do this. If you have questions, go ahead, throw them in the chat or whatever. This is also going to be a rough port because, it's just to get the idea out there and test live streaming because I haven't done this before. So what we can see here is we also have font size is one rem in whatever this little design thing is. There's padding associated with it, top, bottom. Anytime I see a mathematical value, in this case, right, so like 14 pixels, I immediately say, okay, that's a CSS variable. We should have something that defaults to 14 pixels, but doesn't enforce 14 pixels. Now, that's a subtle difference, right? But so for the purposes of this, I did just say I was going to throw away the wrapper. As I look at this, I might actually make one. I just make it like div class wrapper. I don't need it to be that activity box. It'll make a little more sense in a second why I do that. I'm still coming from an old world CSS mindset of I have to have a thing to target other than host. If you're not familiar with colon host is implying like self. So a lot of times you'll see this as just like display block or display flex. So a question there, Tom. Is there a benefit to not making an array? Not really. I did ask Justin Fajani from Lit Element Project about this. The reason that I shouldn't say just I, that our team tries to do it that way is, let's say that we're inheriting, so we make activity box into your original question around the banner, right? So we have a brand banner, which is a big thing. It's a high level concept. And then we're going to take brand banner and we are going to then use that, but we're going to use activity box as a base. So I might get class brand banner extends activity box. At that point, I would be inheriting the styles of activity box and then wanting to mix in the styles of brand banner. As a result, I end up having to do something like this. Whoops. Super styles. So if we got to that relationship, right? So imagine we already have activity box and we had like brand banner. When brand banner inherits all of the characteristics of activity box, it's going to want to mix in styles. Otherwise, like, why is it named something else? So what you can do is, since these are all arrays, you can use a spread operator. And the spread operator is a shorthand of basically saying, like, take all of the items in this array and reevaluate each position. So if you imagine there's like an array on an array and an array, and they're all kind of getting stacked up together, this methodology of putting in an array allows you to then do this and ensure that you're kind of just saying, everybody that has styles, put their styles first, then evaluate my styles. So I hope that unpacks that concept. That is a personal preference as far as the way that we build these out, but that is, I've had a lot of success with stacking it that way. So, all right, back to the wrapper. We're going to take that to the wrapper. I mentioned CSS variables. So after talking about variable naming in issue queues with the Patternfly folks, we've landed on name of the element, activity box, hyphen purpose of this semantically. So it might be like container or wrapper, and then hyphen the thing in question. So in this case, padding, as far as the naming convention that we use for these. Now I'm just trying to replicate some other design that already exists. It's a little weird to have padding, hyphen top, but that's fine. And that's going to be 14. Okay, and then we got a margin bottom going on. So we're going to do that. It's going to be 20. And we're going to do margin hyphen bottom, right? And then let's call this container for naming purposes. There we go. Okay. So what I'm doing there, and color, I'm not going to do it with color at the moment, just so it looks exactly like what the original design was. But what I'm doing here is I'm establishing a backdoor for other developers implementing this to go, yeah, I really like that, but our design system requires that we have 8 pixels between the padding of this textual area, and the CSS team demands it be pixel perfect. So, all right, so we got that one in place. Cool. Got our activity box. Let's go back to our little comp here. Okay, so div, whoops, I'm down the page, my bad. Div for activity box. Now let's work on that cog before we get into the single, whatever that's called, the pullout, class pullout. Okay, so I got activity box, cog single. Okay, so again, copy this. Now it's called cog single. This is an opportunity to abstract and just make this called like icon. And then what we're going to do is dot icon, or we'll do a fun one here. Set this up in advance. Icon equals cog icon. Okay. Now, some of this will be, I got to actually put the files there. This is getting a proof of concept in place because I have to actually talk to the team that developed this to make sure that this is how they want this handled. But I would then say, okay, well, what is the difference between, right, this designed area and this designed area? And I go, nothing other than the icon, right? So the icon in this case is called bulb single. And so what I would do is I would pull bulb single. All the rest is the same, right? All of the, well, in this case, it looks like there might be some difference. So let's look at what the bulb single looks like here. But so we're going to do cog icon dot icon. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to fire up :host, and I'll show in a second why I'm doing it this way. Bulb, actually, we'll call it icon. We'll just do it this way. Dot icon. Okay, so looking at their invocation of this design system. And let's take this out of here. So this is actually the way I end up processing this personally. So I go, okay, there's a cog and there's a bulb variant. I'm going to use a property here. And so to define properties in lit element, I can do static get properties, return, and we're going to do icon, right? And this is going to be type string. And then we're going to do something fancy. We're going to do reflect true. And what reflect true says is whenever the property value updates inside of this web component, make sure that it's actually written as an attribute in the DOM. So if you juggle properties around, you change pass data around, modify it in whatever way, it doesn't guarantee it's the same as the attribute. Now, if you know the difference between a property and an attribute, property is that this is an icon and is a full-blown typed value. So it's a variable, but I know it's a string. Or I could make it a number, and I would know that it's a number. It behaves like a number. Whereas an attribute is just a purely thing equals value. You don't know if it's a string or a number or whatever. So by doing this reflect, what it gives me as a developer is the ability to now use this thing as a CSS selector. So with :host, I have, so :host in web components is the self, right? Like I'm touching this element, I'm modifying its CSS. And then we're saying, okay, on this element, when there's an icon or attribute equaling bulb, right? So we get this new CSS selector that we can cascade down from. So now what I do is look at the overlap between these. I go, okay, well, these are the same. So those go into just icon. I can get rid of it from there. Float left is the same, so I can go there. The margins look a little different, but height and width are the same, so that can go there. All right. Get rid of that, get rid of this. And I'll be honest, these probably should be about the same, but they're not at the moment, so let's just not mess with it. So now we've got two different variations, right? Now we can define a thing that has icon cog, a thing that has icon bulb. So let's actually start to look at what this looks like. The last thing, let's do the, it's not cog single, it's .icon. So let's do, this has to be icon because we're abstracting it from that. Now we need to account for pull out and whatever this class is. So now let's find pull out here and pull out, there we go. You can see it has a couple things applied to it, but we'll do dot pull out. All right, and then we're going to go snag margin top from here, and we're going to snag this, and we're going to snag color white. Okay, and we'll do color white. Okay, so now we've effectively taken the primary visual, differences. I think that's it. Yeah, oh, max with 100, sure, just for fun. Probably should be that anyway, but all right, so now we've got pull out supplied. Then we start to abstract this and go, well, I don't know what they're going to put there, to be perfectly honest. I personally don't want it to be a paragraph. And this is, something I'll have to talk through with them. But to me, that's a div because it's visually structuring this information somehow. A paragraph has an actual semantic intention. So we're going to drop the fact that it's a paragraph. It's not really a paragraph. Then we're going to take this out of here. We're going to replace it with slot. So slot in web components allows us to effectively say whatever's above us, right? So when we implement this element, we're going to take the HTML that's in the what's called light DOM, and it's going to sit in the tag, right? So there's going to be a tag called activity-box, and it's going to have HTML in it just like anything else. Slot says whenever you take that stuff from the outside, right? So somebody's put some content in there, place it here in the what's called shadow root. So this is in the shadow DOM. This is the kind of magic internals of our element that lays it out a certain way, applies CSS that only works here, that fun stuff. So I'm going to save activity box. Now I'm going to go to my demo that I haven't added this into yet. And we are going to do h3 basic usage of activity-box. Okay. Now this demo snippet, this is just a nice simple way of viewing an element and having a copy button that that the Polymer team came up with ages ago. So we still use it because it is kind of nice, but we only use it in demos. So I'm going to paste in that drag and drop text from before. Now we're going to do activity box. We're going to do icon. Actually, we won't set an icon right now. I'll show why in a second. It's another teachable moment. And then, okay, let's save. Let's see if I have this running. No. Oh, okay, let's make it start running so that we can see the demo. All right, so, oh, the demo was here. I'm stupid. Okay, so we've got activity box here. Okay. And then we can look in activity box and see there's nothing in it. Well, that's because we didn't import it. So you have to import it. So I just wanted to show this is what happens when you don't have any actual HTML definition for this, right? It just behaves like a div or anything else. So let's import that. All right, so this is activity box, save. All right, there's some minor styling applied at least. Maybe there isn't actually. Oh, custom element is not defined. That's funny. Right. Custom elements. That's why. Okay, there we go. So now we can see that we've got at least the outline, the shading associated with what the original mockup is, right? Which is this thing. So next, we need to address the font is not the right color. So you can see with the slot, just visually see that here, right? It says reveal text. So this is now saying, right, when you write slot, it's saying take whatever's inside of the implementation of the element and actually visually stick it right here. So, all right, so we got the slot there. We need to influence that text and make it be white. So I think you could just do that on the high level here. Let's see. This is always a question. Web component, no, that didn't work. Okay, so another way to influence color of text specifically is, so we can do dot pull out, and then we can do what's called a pseudo selector. So I can do : slotted, and I'll say anything in here because this is being an aggressive one. We're just trying to match this design spec. Really? I was nearly positive that would actually work. Huh. Well, that is peculiar. It's also got a weird font thing there. It's not connected to it, right? No. Interesting. Okay. Maybe we have to actually put the div tag, or a paragraph, sorry, inside of it. So I don't have it in a tag right now. It's just a text blob. Let's see what happens when we put a paragraph inside. Ah, there we go. Okay. Now we can influence because it's a paragraph. And it's inside an HTML element. Okay, that makes sense to me now. So now it's inside an HTML element. This stuff I could apply to it. I could say like, hey, when you use this, it has to have a paragraph tag in it. And if it has a paragraph tag in it, now it'll get all these other characteristics. Oh, you know what? Actually, see, I have color black there. That's what was actually influencing it if we get rid of that. Nice. So now I can get rid of those paragraphs because it does the thing I wanted. There we go. All right, let's stick with that then. But that was an interesting detour. So I'm not going to do the slotted. I'm just going to actually write CSS correctly in the first place. That would have been a good idea. So in a real world, obviously, CSS variables for all these things, kind of like I threw on these ones. Oops, don't need a double. What was the next? Oh, yeah, the icon. So there's no icon right now. So what we want to do is, and anytime you have a property, even if it's just to set it to nothing, I think it's really important to set it to some default value. So this .icon we're going to set to, and it's a string, right? But we're going to set it to bulb. We'll say that's the default one. And now bulb is there, right? And we're able to use this CSS selector because it's been reflected to an attribute to say that this matches now, right? So now we can actually target that icon and have it load because of this CSS selector on the parent element. So if we go in now, we know that this will wire up and show itself. So now we can either do activity box, or we can do activity box icon equals bulb, or what's the other one? Cog. Okay, so we can copy this, all right? And I like to show like the null case, but also, there we go, also the case that involves the thing, right? So we have bulb is the default, or it's the thing you actually go and pick. So this is granted, these are not my icons. We still need to talk about the sustainable way to implement that for sure, but I believe that looks exactly like it did before. Let's see. Move that over there, collapse that. I mean, it's exactly there. So you can see this is a nice advantage to web components. Now I just have this and I can use it anywhere. Now granted, you probably want your design system to look like this styling. It's a different issue. But now let's wire this into HAX, because I said that was why I was pulling this together. Also live streaming this because I said I would make this for them so they could see how to do it. So you all get to follow along, and then I get to send this video to them and say, hey, look, I did it. So now we're going to wire this to HAX. So I'm going to close away their example. We'll go back to this thing. And HAX, if you're not familiar, is HAXTheWeb.org. So HAXTheWeb.org, if you go to the demo and you play with it, the big deal is that these elements on the page that are advanced elements are web components, and that anyone can engineer really rich content because, in this case, this video player is always going to be the video player. So let's wire a new thing up to this and show you how we work on that locally. So I am lazy. So I always just steal from past versions of me, and past me made this block quote and ported it over. So I'm going to make the activity box. Okay, we'll go. All right, so now we're most of the way to wiring it up to HAX. I know that was really hard. I just copy and pasted it. Wow. So, all right, we got block quote instead of block quote. All right, let's read down through. Skipping ahead here. All right, so can you scale this item? Based on their implementation of it, it looks like it's a full width. I don't want people to be able to resize it. So we're going to say no. Users should not be able to scale it. Can they position it? No. Can they edit its source? Now, edit its source implies that you can actually turn it into a code view and modify it. Nice, Tom. So let's allow editing its source. This is going to be called an activity box. All right, description, a small designed heading, and that's actually something I think I'm going to add to this, is make it into a heading. But so we'll leave it at this little icon is whatever. That's fine. That's fine. This is for education and it's textual presentation. And I'm actually going to change this to Buttercups. Give them credit for this because they made this. I'm just, doing the porting. So settings, okay. This is where we say, how does our component operate? All right, so we got an icon. It's called the icon. And for, think I have options is a thing. It's weird when you write the specification for something. Okay, yeah, it is. You're right. It's weird when you write the specification for how something works, but you're really lazy and still want to just find the shortcuts. So you can define, and what I'm defining here is I'm defining the interface. So the interface as how HAX brokers to this element to make changes to it. So if I want to build an interface element to interface with it for a non-technical user and say, hey, I want the user to see a field called icon, and it should be a select list, and it should only have these two options, then that's one step closer to no user error and being able to sleep on Friday when you push code at, well, it's 2:50 right now, but at whatever time it is. So we're going to say bulb because you've eliminated user error. All right, so get rid of icon there. Okay, so what this is saying is create a field on the interface for the user when someone wants to work with this, and it's an icon. And then present a select list, and they can pick between cog and bulb. That's what we're seeing here. All right, reading Tom's question. If edit source was false, does it encapsulate the content in a shadow/shady DOM so it's not editable in code view? I'll show you what it does. What it does is it removes a button on the UI so that you can't click view source. And the newest version of HAX 3.0.0 or 3.0.2 or whatever we're on right now, it's 3x, just pushed out 3x, major new release, has the ability to do a inline little itty bitty code mirror instance on any element using this property as the thing that kicks it off. So what we're going to do is we're going to clean up this schema, and then we'll fire up a copy of HAX, and I'll show you how we get that added in. So then there's demo schema, and this is new as of 3x as well. Demo schema allows us to provide just an easy to visualize copy with pre-populated material if the user was to click and drag and drop it onto the interface. Or just click it and it would show up in context. So this is kind of your defaults, like what do you want so they can make sense of this element when they're first using it. So I'm going to say it's activity box, and it's a little annoying, you have to constantly do that, but I don't want to force you to have the name of the element in this thing. You could deploy a different element if you wanted. Or if your element works inside of like gallery and it's an image type or something. So now we get the properties. So I'm going to say that the default icon in this case should be, and we'll call it cog for this purpose. And then the content we'll take from earlier. We said drag drop. Now I don't need it to be inside of a paragraph as I just proved a second ago, but I'm just going to leave it inside a paragraph for the time being. Make sure it works actually. Okay, I think this schema is done. It's ready to work in HAX. So let's see how we actually get it to show up in HAX. So from a local development perspective, I should say. So I'm going to go to HAX. That's what everyone in the universe should care about. So we're going to go to HAX. We're going to demo. We're going to open up appstore.json. Okay. And then I'm just going to do a yarn start on HAX, and we'll see what that does as well. So before we wire the two together, so we have an idea of what the heck this is, why you would care. Okay, so we got HAX fired up. This is just the HAX tag in the DOM. If we scroll down, you can see HAX, and then it's got some HTML in it, some web components, and then it's got a reference to something called App Store, which I'll explain what that does in a moment. However, by just having that tag there, loading the definition, I can now hit edit, and this stuff becomes editable, and we've generated a user interface for it. So you can take that and make the primary color indigo, type in context, which is something I will add as a capability, I think, to the other one, because that's new in 3x as well. Modify. Then I can make it the dark theme if I want to. Let's collapse that out of the way. Go to the answer, content area. This is the answer. And then we can go back. We can look at that icon, I believe. Is that icon modifiable? No, we didn't make the icon modifiable. But so this is HAX. This is the, we're able to just touch the the DOM, and the reason that that works is because Hax is brokering those properties into our web component, and it's literally just more, typing in, typing in the field, right? So there's a self-check tag, it's got a title, I can do that, and I hit update source, and I get the exact same thing, even the state is maintained because that element is very well made. So we want this new element to get here. So to wire this element up, right, we want to empower people to be able to just put in whatever their creations are. So we're going to go over to activity box at first because I think I forgot to add a slot property. So let's make sure that we have slot title equals content and description equals inner content of this element. And I don't think I need anything other than that. I think let's add input method, and we'll do code hyphen editor. So we have a code editor for it. So, all right, we got activity box. Now, to get things to load into Hax, the way where their definitions get read off so that they are available, is you have to load up its App Store. So the App Store is a specification that Hax uses to basically say, like, here's the rules of the road, here's what to load, here's what I can edit. We're really getting into the weeds of, like, elements can be pulled in that actually directly manipulate the store in Hax, which Hax uses a MobX-based store now. So you can see we have block quote here. And so I'm going to add in to this array blob here, we're going to add in activity box. So the way of reading this is, or the way Hax uses this, is it takes in the App Store and it goes, okay, I'm setting myself up. Oh, here's the autoloader. Load this tag from this location. And when you load it, it's going to look for, during the dynamic import, it's going to look for a static get Hax properties. If it is valid schema, it understands how to work with it. So let's go and let's refresh. So all I did was put that in the App Store. Now, if I want to add that to the page, under Add Content now, I should get, and you see it there, Activity Box. So now if I drag Activity Box in, we have an editable Activity Box. It's as easy as that, I guess. I guess it's sort of as easy as that. If I want it to be a light bulb or the cog, and now I've made an authoring interface for what was previously a visual element. So the citation element is here, things and stuff. I can now update live just like that. Now, if we went to self-check had the ability, right? It highlighted that little thing, and it's content editable, which Hax never used to allow. It never used to allow these individual things to be content editable, but now it does. So how could we apply that to this? This gets into a new concept in Hax 3 called Hax hooks. Also, if you have any questions, stop me at any time. So we're going through this. So, all right, we built out a UI. There's no layout here. Tom, to your question earlier about the view source, because I said true on that, I can hit modify HTML source and actually see the source here. So that is what that does. So now I can go in and say, like, well, I actually wanted that to be a paragraph. I don't want it to be span. And I could change this forcibly to cog and hit modify, and now it puts it back in the page, and I've got it in this format. I could also, let's see, we could build a grid, and let's move that out of the way. I could take this element, drop it in there. That's stuff that just happens in Hax automatically, right? We could also duplicate it, so I could take that, move it over there, then we'll pull this thing back out, and we'll say it's a light bulb. So even just right there, making those two little things, this is faster than the original team made the documentation for how to use these things. I can now just drop them into the interface and do whatever I want with them. And this applies to anything. It's any web component we can wire up in this way very, very rapidly. So let's get it to use Hax hooks because that's a newer API. It's pretty stinking cool. Let's blow up the grid here so these are out here. So the thing that I want to be able to edit is I want a user to just be able to touch this and just start typing. There is another tag, I believe it's called a stop note. Now a stop note, and this is a fun thing I'll actually do with that as well. Stop note, whoops. Maybe I don't have stop note loaded in here. I could have sworn I had stop note loaded in here. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Stop note, I have a weird little UI convention in it where, okay, so hey, right, you can put this in, but maybe it wasn't stop, maybe it was, whoops. Go back and read the directions. Okay, but now maybe it's actually, it wasn't that. Oh, I don't have the other ones in there. I thought there were other, let's go to confirmation. Might not be loading the icons are SVGs. Oh, now notice. Okay, there we go. It's starting to get there. Sometimes, for whatever reason, the local tool there. Now they're all in there. Oh, now it's still just 2 of them. But anyway, the local tooling gets a little weirded out sometimes about SVGs. And loading them up. There we go. Now it's letting me do it. That was weird. So you can see it even glitches occasionally as it loads it in because of the SVG. But so now what I can do is I just put in a real basic like, I didn't want to stop, right? So we have another way that you can modify this, and it's still just modifying state. So there's confirmation. If I move this over from confirmation, we'll see it says notice. If I change it to warning, right? We can also click this button and toggle the icon between different things, right? And you can see it over there in the action icon, it's updating. Or we can modify source, right? And these are all just minor settings within the way that we tell the element to operate. But so let's try to get some of this functionality into this other thing, right? Right, the ability to type there is really nice. And yes, I could just go over here and do it. And we do have a little, you notice a little state management issue there. All right, so as I do that, if I come back to it, now it's correct. Stuff is instant, but if I come over here and I go, right, it's not applying it over there, but if I hit this, no, it's not applying it, but it is for that one, right? So there's a minor state management data handoff type of a thing there that I do need to address. So let's look at how, I believe stop note has some good implementations here because it is one of the first elements we have that uses HAX hooks. HAX hooks. So HAX hooks is a way that we can basically allow any element, but specifically the element you're about to access, tap in and manipulate or tie into and react to HAX changing state values in the entire application. So, what do I mean by that? I mean, when I hit edit or save, right, this is no longer clickable. That's what we're trying to undo, right? I can't click these things. They are no longer content editable. They were somehow informed by the editor that they are no longer to be modified. And that's what HAX hooks is providing. So if we go in and look at what a HAX hook is, there's HAX hook. There's active element changed. And what active element changed means is HAX has clicked or the user selected it or it somehow became active, this item. So when this item in question, no matter what it is activated, do something. So what you get in the callback for that is you get access the element and you get the value, which is whether or not it's become active or it's been deactivated. So now for the context menu, that little toggle icon, right? So this is, it becomes active, but something else in HAX says, hey, I'm trying to build a context menu for this element. Do you care? Right? So this gives it the entire menu object. It can actually go through there. But let's just react to this becoming editable, because if we look at this, it says, well, when we're activated, I need you to add a click handler to the icon so people can click it. And I also need you to take container, which is just a shadow root query. I need you to make it content editable. So that's pretty easy. I mean, like these HAX hooks, I can just copy and paste to enhance the user experience. So let's go to activity box, right? We're going to do a HAX hook here. Let's get rid of those inline ones. I don't care about that. There's no SVG wrap thing at the moment because I don't want to do that toggle thing. It's not fully hashed out. Okay, so we're going to set content editable on a container. And I believe the container we will set content editable on. Where's render? There it is. So let's do it on this class pullout here and see if we can modify the slot. This I actually don't know. I'll be perfectly honest. I do not know if we can modify the slot in this way. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying when this tag becomes active, then set content editable if the user is editing us. So let's reload and see. So we got this opened up. Whoops. Hey, let me type. Thank you. Okay. I'm typing. So let's do activity box. Did it load up activity box? No, it's over here. I gotta actually drop it in. Okay. So there's activity box, right? And I can modify that. But I apparently cannot just content editable edit that. Now it does have some selection to it, which implies something is content editable. So I think what I might want to do instead is just this. So make the whole stupid thing content editable. Let's see if that helps. Because that's actually where this lives. It's inside the tag itself. So let's go here. Throw in activity box. Huh. Well, that's interesting. It won't actually let me modify that via content editable. And that's because there's a span in there, which, so I get, let's see here. So if I click, it says Hax active, but it doesn't actually pick up content editable. That's a little weird. Oh, I wonder if it needs to be on the element. Let's see. Because this is a little amorphous at that point. I don't know that I passed context inappropriately. So let's see. So let's take that activity box, throw it on the page. Right click. There's the pullout. Huh. It's still not applying our content editable there. Now I wonder what happens if we do content editable on here. Content editable. Nothing. All right. Reveal this span. What happens if we do content editable on there? All right. So if we do content editable on that, it works. So let's do. Okay. Container. Let's do this dot query selector span. So we're going to look for an element in the element itself. It's actually, I might want to apply to element instead. Let's see. And we're going to set that to be content editable, which is weird for sure. But all right, let's take add, throw activity box in there, close. Huh, still not targeting that correctly. Well, I'm getting an error, so that's good. Cannot read property set attribute of null. All right, good. There's an error at least. As it said that failed. So let's try it on this, because it should be on this, but. Activity box. No, it's still cannot read property set attribute of null. That is so bizarre. Huh. What if we just say select anything? I'm legitimately curious. I don't know. I haven't made a lot of these yet. This is like a newer API that we've established. So there's some nesting of items that gets a little weird. All right. I'll see. So it's saying drag and drop. Right? That is so interesting. Right? It's saying that it's there. It's showing it in the DOM. Huh. That is so interesting that it's doing that. Huh. So there's two ways I gotta handle that. Now, it looks like they just want text here. So I could make an attribute, or sorry, a property, and that property gets updated. We make the properties wrapper content editable, and then that would work. If someone wants to start using, I'm answering the question here. Someone needs to start using Hax, but they had their own store set up internally. Do they add the Hax store to that or their store to the Hax store? Why are both to? I'm not sure I understand the question, Tom. I'm gonna have to. How are you defining a store? Do you mean like where you get all of your elements from? I'll wait for him to respond to that while I do my wiring here. So, all right, what I'm going to do with this container, where the elements are defined. So the App Store can be stored anywhere. It's just a JSON file, right? So in HAXCMS, for example, when it implements this, it's generating it from a PHP backend. So it's doing some processing, looking at like the elements defined on the file system, hitting a CDN, and then stitching them together. So these, technically these could come from somewhere else entirely, I believe. But it's probably best practice to have them all in one place. So, you could take my activity box that I'm working on and you could pull it down, have a local definition of it. Like if you had two lists of element definition. Yeah, you would probably still want to stitch those together ahead of time. So the question is whether you have two lists of elements coming in. I think you'd still want them to be one list, but that'd certainly be an interesting thing to add to the issue queue, is maybe the ability to just singularly load in definitions of elements as a separate thing. Right now, the App Store does blocks and stacks, which are two concepts we're sort of toying with getting rid of because they're not terribly useful in their current implementation. But the apps come in here as well, and the apps definition coming through this is how you can search things. So like I could search NASA and just throw down an image from NASA real quick. So that's coming across the same thing. So I would say you'd probably want something to generate that JSON file on your behalf that just mixes together the two lists of elements, as opposed to you pointing to two different, like app stores, because there would have to be trust involved that you're getting elements from someone else that you don't know anything about. You have their own element definition store. Yeah, that's true. I did make a, see if I can't find the issue post about it. I think it just says future. Yes. Proposal for the future of the web, App Store suppliers, package managers, and CDN alignment. Some of this we have implemented, but it does express, theoretical ideas like that. I'll actually throw a link to that in the chat in case you want to read that at another time. So yeah, that's a good, it's certainly something we've thought of. You need to reach a level of propagation with this where someone has that problem to put it in. I don't think it's terribly difficult to do, actually. We just haven't had a need to do it just yet. So on our activity box, let's look at self-check, because self-check does do this slot modification thing. All right. And I believe it and interface with HAXhooks. So it says make the title content editable. And that is so interesting because I was pretty sure that there was something to make the other text editable that I actually had to do. I'm questioning how I did that now. Like how it actually just sort of works. I don't recall having to do any special hack schema or anything like that to make it content editable for those properties. That's a little weird. Yeah, it says container and the container is on title, and so that's just to update the title, but the slotted areas are both modifiable. I wonder if it's because it doesn't allow you to edit the slot in its schema. So let's see. Let's take out that slot definition there. See if this helps at all. All right, let's go back here. Oops, that's worksheet download. I don't want that. Activity box. Okay, activity box. There we go. Okay. So that was the issue. I had already indicated, hey, make this a field, and because it made it a field, it was kind of blocking itself from making that content editable. So there we go. So now we can actually just type in context and modify this, or we can pop open source and say, oh shoot, we should do this, and then walk away from it. And I think it's save, fake save. Nice, it went away. So it became content editable, and not when I hit that, right? Yeah. So it's not content editable right now, but when I engage with it, it knows to make that area content editable. Now, it's still complaining about me modifying this. I don't even think I need the complexity of this right now. I don't even think I need HAXhooks to do that. I didn't realize. Silly me, I made it easier to implement than I needed to. So now let's go to activity box. Where are you, activity box? Come on, activity box. There we go. Nope, no, I did need to, okay. Oh, there we go, modifiable. Yay! So now I can modify that, go do something else, come back. Yay. Okay, cool. So now we can make as many of these as we want and do it way faster than they used to be able to, and have a nice little API for switching between their different styles. So that kind of fulfills the entire scope of what I know they had in mind, what I wanted to do, at least as far as an initial port for their thing to mess with. So I'm going to post this code up, and then I'll be able to close out that issue. Yay. So all right, let's shut down those watches and status. All right, cool. Copy, get add a, get commit m, paste that in there, get partial origin master, and so now that code will be up there, so that if you all want to see the code associated with this, it's going to be under course design. Go in there, lib, and there's activity box. So obviously not a final, still work in progress. I'll actually ping them on this in one of our back channels so that they can check it out, pull up this video and whatever. So there's the code, and we'll go through that in the chat as well. If you want to learn more about our projects, as always, you can go to haxtheweb.org. Or hop on Slack. It's bit.ly/hax, HAX, Slack, and that'll get you into our Slack channel. So with that, happy Friday. Catch you later, YouTubes.